This video is brought to you by Squarespace. After 40 years of avoiding it, I've finally done it. I've watched Give My Regards to Broad Street. I'm Andrew from Parlogram, and in this video, I'll not only give you my reaction to it, but with the help of our scrapbook archive, find out exactly what everyone else thought about it back in 1984. So join me for the anniversary no one is celebrating. It's Give My Regards to Broad Street at 40. Yes, you heard me right. Up until a few days ago, I'd never seen this film, and having spent 40 years hearing how bad it wasn't something I was looking forward to watching. Although I'd really enjoyed the Tug of War album in 1982, I'd been largely disappointed by Pipes of Peace. However, Paul had one more great song up his sleeve. Based around a simple riff, No More Lonely Nights was, even by Paul's own admission, up there with anything he'd written with the Beatles. Backed by some proper old-fashioned orchestration by Anne Dudley, and by the late great Herbie Flowers on bass, and David Gilmour on guitar, this magnificent track is seen by many as Paul's last great pop single. Released on September the 24th, 1984, No More Lonely Nights became a massive worldwide hit. It came in both 7 and 12-inch versions, and there was even a special DJ-only 12-inch version called the Mole Mix, which was limited to 300 individually numbered copies. However, there was something about initial copies of the 7-inch that angered Paul, which this article in The Sun reported on a few days after its release on September the 27th.
Paul McCartney is a stickler for accuracy, so it's little wonder he was hopping mad last night after hearing that almost 100,000 copies of his new single No More Lonely Nights have been sent out to record shops with a glaring spelling mistake on the label. The word lonely has been spelt lonely. Paul was furious when he found out, a friend tells me. He has insisted that all copies of the single are returned to the pressing plant to have the error corrected. The mistake will cost thousands of pounds to put right, and Paul, who is particularly careful with money, will make sure that it doesn't come out of his pocket.
Despite the fuss, many copies, such as this one, managed to make it to the shops, and of course became instant collectibles. Although this single is today regarded as one of his best, British music paper reviewers back in 1984 were not as enthusiastic.
2 tempos for the same song, one up, one down, but inevitably the A-side is Macca's soporific norm of late. Still, there's a decent new version of Silly Love Songs also from the Broad Street Spectacular on the 12-inch. They do say the bad news comes in threes, don't they? There really is nothing constructive to say about any Macca records, though this is slightly better than Mull of Kintyre, slightly. Dull as dishwater.
But the criticism of No More Lonely Nights was a day on the beach compared to what was about to follow. Paul had been wanting to make a feature film ever since the early 1970s. There had been scripts for projects based on the Band on the Run and Tug of War albums, but they had never gotten beyond the draft stage. The inspiration for Give My Regards to Broad Street came to him one rainy day as he sat in a traffic jam in the back of his chauffeur-driven car. Taking out a pencil and notepad, he began jotting down random ideas, which he thought would make a good film. But instead of handing those over to a professional scriptwriter, Paul made his first and perhaps biggest mistake. He decided to write the screenplay himself. The storyline was wafer thin and centered around the theft of the master tape for his new album by an ex-Con employee.
That unless the tapes are found by midnight tonight, the consequences will be very serious.
Looking at who else was involved in the film's production, it looked like he was onto a real winner. George Martin and Geoff Emerick were there to take care of the music. There was even Stanley Kubrick's favourite and Academy Award-winning costume designer, Milena Canonero. There was no shortage of musical talent on offer either. in the form of Ringo Starr, Dave Edmunds, Chris Spedding, John Paul Jones and Eric Stewart. There was even a part for the great Ralph Richardson, which turned out to be his final acting role. Not to mention the appearance of celebrity professional wrestler Luke McMasters, better known as Giant Haystacks. The cast were backed up by an experienced and talented technical crew, which included camera operator Colin Corby, who had by chance been one of the camera operators filming the Beatles on the rooftop in 1969. Of course, the choice of songs and music in the film would be crucial to the film's success, and Paul felt that enough water had gone under the bridge for him to be able to enjoy singing Beatles songs again. However, Ringo wasn't so keen. He selected around 50 songs he fancied having a go at, and then sat down with the director to select ones to include in the film. Some were chosen because they fitted with the story, and others, like Yesterday, were chosen at the director's request. Realising that he hadn't sung them since 1966, Paul chose 3 songs from Revolver: For No One, Eleanor Rigby, and Here, There and Everywhere. They were joined by 2 songs from Tug of War, Ballroom Dancing and Wanderlust, along with updated versions of The Long and Winding Road and Silly Love Songs, with So Bad from Pipes of Peace thrown in for good measure. A total of 7 new tracks were recorded, 2 versions of No More Lonely Nights, Corridor Music, Not Such a Bad Boy, No Values, Goodnight Princess, and Eleanor's Dream. As this was too much for a single disc and not enough for a double, the decision was made to omit So Bad and Goodnight Princess from the vinyl, but they were included on the CD and cassette. Also, Eleanor's Dream was trimmed by around 6 minutes, as were sections of Good Day Sunshine, Wanderlust, and the playout version of No More Lonely Nights. The Give My Regards to Broad Street album was released on October the 22nd, 1984, and became the first McCartney album to be issued simultaneously on LP, cassette, and CD. It debuted in the UK chart at number 1 and made the top 10 in many countries around the world, and went on to sell over 500,000 copies in the US. If you need a stylish, professional-looking website for your brand or business, this video sponsor Squarespace can make it happen quickly and easily. Don't worry if you've never designed a website before. That's where Squarespace's design intelligence comes in. Developed over 2 decades, this cutting-edge AI design technology allows you to unlock your creative potential and build a beautiful personalized website which can fulfill all your needs across all devices. Their state-of-the-art drag-and-drop system, in combination with their award-winning design templates, will have you up and running in no time at all. Onboarding is fast and simple with Squarespace Payments, which allows you to manage payments all in one place. Plus, it gives your customers more flexibility when paying, with popular options such as Klarna, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay. To find out how Squarespace can work for your business, head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/parlogram to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
1984.
Ahead of the album and film's release, Paul embarked on a media blitz unlike anything he'd done since the Beatles, giving interviews to newspapers and magazines and appearing on various TV chat shows. Clearly tired of the same old questions, he struggled to keep his disdain for these ordeals under control.
I'm just trying to warm up here. Slap myself around the head. Oh boy.
During his appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson on October the 23rd, he appeared very defensive and on edge, but his mood wasn't helped by some of Johnny's questions.
Do you see Ringo much anymore, by the way?
Yeah.
Keep in touch?
We made a film with him.
Yeah.
During the filming.
Almost a month after its US premiere, the film's UK premiere took place on the 28th of November at the Odeon Cinema in Liverpool, where A Hard Day's Night had received its premiere 20 years earlier. The same day also saw Paul receiving the freedom of the city of Liverpool, which of course gave the tabloids another chance to have a dig at the millionaire pop star, as they all like to call him.
A mild touch of Beatlemania returned to Liverpool yesterday. Paul McCartney was back in town to be made a freeman of the city, and the richest man in pop got a tumultuous welcome from fellow Scousers beleaguered by poverty and unemployment.
That same paper, the Daily Star, also gave the public one of its first reviews of the film, which must have set the alarm bells ringing at MPL.
Paul McCartney has been everywhere on the telly and radio, relentlessly plugging his new movie, Give My Regards to Broad Street. He's been wasting his time. You can't revive a corpse, and this film is a complete non-starter. The pathetic plot, which has all the suspense and interest of a wet tissue, has McCartney searching for the missing master tape of his new album, which has vanished in the company of an employee with a criminal record. So what went wrong? Quite simply, even forgetting the dud script, the trouble is McCartney himself. He just isn't an actor, and the film desperately needs one in the central role. While he appears to be perfectly at ease in front of the cameras, that really isn't enough. He never convinced me, except when he sang, that the character was a real person. He merely came over with all the impact of a feather landing on water. The movie drags like a wounded snail. Some silly fantasy sequences and a chance to see Ringo Starr playing the drums again can't save it. And there's a wicked waste of the talents of the late great Ralph Richardson in a cameo role.
And it wasn't long before everyone was putting the boot in. Here's a flavour of some of the other contemporary reviews culled from the British press.
It's good to hear Paul McCartney singing Yesterday. Unfortunately, the line in the song that tells us the singer is not the man he used to be is a prophetic comment on his latest film. McCartney wrote the screenplay and a few new songs for this slap-happy ego party, which serves up musical charades performed by himself and a few friends. Give My Regards to Broad Street is coy, whimsical, self-indulgent, but it can't be called a disaster. It's far too dull for that. It's an astonishing miscalculation, and a valuable document on the psychology of the hugely rich and famous. Dressed down to a nonchalant nicety, he cannot disguise the fact that his perspectives are about as average as a parakeet's in Marks and Spencer's, which is not another way of saying he has an exotic imagination, for he hasn't. What he has instead, and it's rock and roll's fault, is a conviction that life is blithe and that his is worth watching. Maybe if people paid fortunes at auctions for my old laundry bills, I should go the same way. Broad Street is McCartney gazing at the reflection of the perspex mask of his past, his soul. I find it wanting, severely debilitated. It could be the harbinger of his real decline. These days, as someone once said of Dorian Gray, I'd hate to see the mirror in his attic.
And reviews in the American press were just as bad.
Paul McCartney's new film, Give My Regards to Broad Street, wafted into movie theaters last month with all the urgency of an autumn breeze. Its madcap dashes and flights of musical-inspired whimsy seek to recreate the fast-paced farce of the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. But this lavish vanity project offers a thinner plot than the Say 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 video, less emotional depth than a greeting card, and all the belly laughs of its lame-brain title. Even Yesterday rings with no more self-knowledge than when Paul sang it on The Ed Sullivan Show. For all his musical skill, McCartney remains unwilling to share any deeper emotions with his audience. Give My Regards to Broad Street seems to reinforce the view that McCartney espoused on Pipes of Peace. What good is art when it hurts your head?
And there's nothing the British tabloids like best than kicking a man when he's down.
Paul McCartney's much-touted movie, Give My Regards to Broad Street, has flopped badly in the States. The film, which cost nearly £10 million to make, took only £440,000 in its first weekend, and is doing so badly in some cities, it may be axed after just 1 week. It opened in 311 cinemas across America, but despite a massive advertising campaign, has failed to make the top 20 at the box office. Variety magazine, the movie industry's Bible, has described box office receipts as pathetic. Variety described it as characterless, bloodless and pointless, and added that it would be here today, gone tomorrow.
Despite the rotten reviews, the film was actually very popular at the British box office. Not because everyone disagreed with the critics. A lot of it was down to this little fella.
Hello, my name's Paul McCartney, and this is my friend, Rupert the Bear. Say hello. Hello.
Rupert was a character from Paul's childhood who he was very fond of. And a song Paul recorded called We All Stand Together was a huge hit in the UK, reaching number 3 in the charts. That song was featured in a 13-minute animated short called Rupert and the Frog Song, which was being shown in cinemas immediately preceding Give My Regards to Broad Street. If you'd like to know more about this charming song and its cartoon, we made a dedicated video about it a few months ago, a link to which is in the description. Now, I can understand why Give My Regards to Broad Street was such a disappointment to those who saw it in 1984. But how does it stand up today? And what did I think of it when I watched it for the first time a few days ago? Now, I approached watching this film in a similar way as I would if I had to go to the dentist's for some kind of procedure for the first time. In other words, it was something I needed to do, but wasn't something I thought I was going to enjoy.
What a load of cobblers.
As nearly everything I've ever read or heard about this film has been negative, I felt a real sense of trepidation as it began. My first thoughts were that it looked really good. I love that early 80s British film look, and enjoyed seeing London before everything was redeveloped and ruined. Also, being a car fan, I enjoyed seeing what was being driven in the film. For example, there was this classic Rover P4 and a gorgeous black Citroën SM. It was also interesting to see Paul in a Commer van, the same in which the Beatles travelled to their gigs in back in 1963. Overall, I thought the film was well lit and well edited, and the dream sequence looked great. It was also a treat to see Ralph Richardson, and spotting some old-school British film and TV actors, such as Jeremy Child, Leonard Dr. Leg Fenton, and Frank Burnside himself, Chris Ellison. The band performances were pretty good too, especially the Warehouse numbers, Not Such a Bad Boy and No Values. And ballroom dancing was a lot more fun than on the Tug of War album. And yes, that busking scene was real. But before we get too cozy, what about the things I didn't like? Paul's acting has never been his strong point, and here he made Giant Haystacks look like a seasoned pro. Every actor in the film did more than their fair share of the heavy lifting. Paul was way too nonchalant, but it was the script, or the lack of it, which was the film's biggest problem. The storyline setup and pretty much the first half of the film was cringeworthy, and although it was totally out of place, I thought the fantasy sequence was really well done. In the end, my sympathies didn't lie with Paul, for it was his overconfidence in his own abilities which let the whole thing down. I felt sorry for the actors who had the misfortune to be in this film. Who knows what effect it had on their careers? There's no doubt the film's failure humbled Paul, and essentially brought to an end his career as a pop star. This was clearly something he found difficult to come to terms with, and he maybe tried too hard to regain on his next album, Press to Play, but that's a story for another day. In the end, he did the sensible thing, stopped making films and concentrated on what he was best at, writing songs, making music and performing live, something which he is thankfully still doing to this day. If you haven't seen the film yourself, it's available to watch on YouTube in its entirety, and I'll put a link to it in the description. If you have, do let me and everyone else know what you think about this film and its soundtrack in the comments. Also, why not watch our video on Rupert and the Frog Song? It's a lot of fun. But that's all for this time, so I'll say bye for now, and thanks for watching.